choose to live in any country in the world, what country would you choose? I personally chose Jamaica. When people find out, they usually go, what? Why? And that includes Jamaican people too. They don't understand and get suspicious, like, what is your interest in Jamaica? So with this video, I'm going to explain why Jamaica and give you the exact reasons that brought me here. I'm originally from Ukraine. I came to Jamaica in 2014, but before that I had traveled in 48 countries and spent a significant time in 9 of them, and that includes 6 years of studying in England. And hence I speak this way instead of speaking English with a strong Ukrainian accent like I should. Anyway, in 2013 I began looking for the best country in the world, and initially I had a feeling it would be Australia. But then Jamaica popped up, which was a surprise for me because at that time I didn't even consider traveling to Jamaica, let alone living there. So what I actually did, I made a list of criteria of the things that were important for me, and then I made a list of every single country in the world and put the two together. So let me share 10 points from this list of criteria that I used, so you will see why Jamaica. So the first one was climate. I wanted a country with no winter. Thank you very much. I simply took Google Maps and cut off the top bit of Google Maps and the bottom bit of Google Maps. So I was left only with the list of countries that were within the equator and the tropical area. As simple as that. Sometimes people ask me, don't you get bored with summer all year round? And no. It's like asking a question, do you ever get bored with sleeping on a comfortable bed? And when I'm talking about hating winter, I don't just mean cold weather. I mean the number of clothes I have to put on, the time I have to spend, the difference in temperatures between being inside and outside, the spare shoes that I have to give my kids to school, and the fact that it takes forever to dress them up and then undress them, and then they're too hot inside. Then
Spring is here, spring. Smell the flowers, spring. Play outside, spring, spring, spring.
And I know that a lot of Jamaicans would prefer to live high in the hills, so it's cooler, or maybe somewhere in Canada where there are 4 seasons. And I guess that's human nature. We always want the things we don't have, and we don't appreciate the things we do have. Number 2 criteria for me was the access to this. You see, I love sailing, and I also love diving and free diving and fish hunting. For me, it has to be a country by the ocean, or at least with some sort of access to the ocean. And that's why all of these countries in the Central Africa just went off the list right away, simply because they don't have an access to this. Number 3, I was looking for a country that has a good ecological situation. Fresh water is available in Jamaica everywhere, and that's why you don't really even need to buy any water in the supermarket. You don't really need any special filters and things, because in Jamaica you have this porous rock, and when the water goes through it, it's brilliant. So you can't drink water from a tap in Jamaica and you would not die. You know, if you did that in Africa or in India even, you know, or in Mexico, you'd have, you know, lots of problems. Jamaica doesn't really have that much pollution either. Yes, there are some factories like bauxite production and things, but in general, the air quality in Jamaica is fantastic. The water quality in Jamaica is fantastic. And fruits and veg. And that's probably one of the reasons why Jamaicans always look so young and strong and energetic, because they keep eating good food, drinking good water, and breathing fresh air. And you know what the crazy thing is? They don't even realize it. They kind of take these things for granted, but it's not like that in the rest of the world. The other factor was health, and that included the risk of getting sick in the first place and the risk of not being able to get a proper treatment in case you do get sick. People might think here, well, Canada or the United States have a fantastic health systems, which is true if you're a citizen of these countries or if you spend a lot of money on your health insurance. However, there was hardly any information about Jamaican healthcare system in the internet, so I had to rely pretty much on the statistics on how many people get sick, why they get sick, quality of life and life expectancy. And surprisingly, Jamaica was pretty good on all of these points, especially if you compare it with other countries within the tropical area. Remember, I already cut off Europe because of winter. So Jamaica is kind of a sweet spot when it comes to health situation and climate. The next criteria was people. You see, Jamaican people are probably some of the most sincere people I've ever seen in my life. If they like you, you would know for sure. If they don't like you, they're not going to talk behind your back. They will just come and say it straight into your face. I'm fine with it. It's all right. Fair enough. I take it. You know, it's fine. Yes, I know a lot of people would prefer to, you know, keep smiling at somebody even if they don't really have a particularly high opinion of this person. But people would prefer this because they would consider this being polite or politically correct or whatever. I personally had enough of this while I lived in Europe. I prefer when people say what they think, and Jamaicans are just people like that. You see, there is one thing about Jamaicans. They would never stick their nose into somebody's business for no reason. Like, you know, they're not going to look over the fence and then go and call the police and say, oh, you know, they have this grass a little taller than they should and stuff like that. But when you need help, they would usually be right there and they won't ask for anything in return. Now, of course, this is just a general impression I have after living here for 6 years. And maybe I'm just lucky and I kept meeting really nice people. I don't know. Maybe that's something that is not typical for Jamaicans. But when I was doing the research, I just wrote to a few Jamaicans through Facebook and asking them questions about Jamaica, and they were very kind and replied back and explained everything to me, which was like, they were just people I didn't even know. I mean, why would they care and spend their time answering the questions of some stranger? But that's exactly what the experience I had. The other criteria was safety. And I don't just mean crime, because crime is everywhere in the world. And Jamaica is nowhere even close to being the worst, even though people think it is. But that's a topic for a different video. A country I considered was Australia, but the thing is, because I love freediving and swimming in general, and Australia has some really nice beaches, but it has dangerous currents in the water. It has all sorts of creatures that can kill you while you're swimming. And I'm not talking about sharks, it's more about like jellyfish and things like that. With Jamaica, you don't have these things. We don't have venomous snakes and spiders. Some people say, well, if you live in the city, it doesn't matter. True, but I don't want to live in the city. I won't. I'm just walking along the abandoned road. It's not like it's a fancy area or something. So we got to the car. Gonna drive. It's my husband. Say hi. I know some people come to Jamaica and they drink beer. The tastiest thing you can get is water. After you walk on the seaside for quite a while when it's really warm, yeah, that's what you get. Now, another positive thing about Jamaica is treatment of women. Obviously, there are certain areas in the world where I would personally love to live. It's like Egypt, for example. I studied Egyptology as one of my hobbies, and definitely staying in Egypt would have been a fantastic place for me. But the problem is, women in Egypt still have quite a lot of restrictions as to what things they can do, what things they cannot do. And the same goes for many countries in the world. For me, it was an important factor, finding a country where a woman could run her own business without being judged as if you cannot run a business because you're a woman. I've noticed that women here occupy a lot of positions as managers, as top managers, as directors, and I've never seen men making fun of them. I mean, you would not see a man telling a woman that you cannot do this kind of work because it's not a girly thing or something. I'm sure a lot of people will understand what I'm talking about. But just to make it clear, As a woman in Jamaica, you have exactly the same rights as men. And it's not only on paper, you are actually treated equally. This is like a given fact in Jamaica, not even discussed anywhere anymore, which is incredible because in a lot of countries in the world, this issue still exists. Another important criteria for me, I was hoping to find an English-speaking country. That is why some of the countries I really liked, and that includes Philippines, Dominican Republic, or Costa Rica, they basically went off the list because of the language factor. Sure, I mean, I can learn Spanish or Tagalog as a matter of fact, but the same would have to apply to my kids and my husband. And it does take a while to become fluent in a certain language. Of course, there is a local language in Jamaica called Jamaican Creole, or like some call it Patois, but every single person in Jamaica knows and understands English, which is certainly very helpful if you want to build a company in Jamaica, which is my next point. Jamaica is a country that has a lot of business opportunities, and that was important for me because I had an online business. I also wanted to create a project in tourism industry. In general, Jamaica is a great place if you are an entrepreneur and you want to start a small business and create job places and, you know, find a good team of people to work with. Some people might see that competition in the tourism industry is really high in Jamaica. And it is so, but only if you sort of offer the same thing as everybody else. But if you want to do something different, if you want to provide a different type of product, then you would certainly find your niche and demand for it exists. I'm not sure how the tourism industry is going to develop now after coronavirus, but I hope it won't disappear and we'll get back on track really soon. And the last important factor from my list that I'd like to mention here is certainly freedom. And by that, I mean everything from major things like the freedom of the press to something personal like saying and doing things I want without being afraid that somebody is going to sue me for my opinion. I just don't like the idea of a country where I have to ask for permission to get a license, to be authorized by a community, to be allowed to repaint my door of my house and be denied because they don't like the color. Don't get me wrong, rules and laws are important for a society, but certain countries like the US, for instance, take this way too far with all the ridiculous bureaucracy and out-of-date laws. Now, Jamaica has an opposite problem. There are some good, solid laws, but many of them are not reinforced, which does give a lot of freedom, but sometimes to the wrong people. Anyway, this topic deserves a separate video and I will certainly talk about it later. So here are my top 10 reasons why I chose Jamaica and why I love Jamaica. If people ask me to give a short reply, why Jamaica, I would usually say I came for the climate, but I stayed for the people. But this wouldn't be entirely true because it's the combination of many different factors. Having said all this, guys, when it comes to living in Jamaica, it's not for everybody. It takes a certain kind of person with certain kind of values to fall in love with Jamaica. But when it happens,